Well, hello everyone. It's Annalisa Burgos, another edition of Annalisa Unfiltered, the vlog. And I'm in Sydney, Australia at the moment, still on my East West Center Journalism Fellowship, as I have been talking about for the last few episodes, because I've been traveling since mid-April. So I've been living out of a suitcase. It's 4 p.m., or actually in Manila, but 6 p.m. here. And we just concluded the last day of our program. So I'm kind of sad, but also relieved because it's been a really intense few weeks traveling. So just to recap, we went to Honolulu to talk about US immigration policy. Then we went to Seoul to talk about Korea. And then we went to Manila to talk about Filipino migration, and Australia, obviously, to talk about immigration here in Sydney. So I wanted to go back and talk about Manila because it was such a whirlwind trip, 4 days. Just really intense meetings with a lot of different segments of the population. As we know, OFWs are everywhere, not just OFWs, the very temporary migrant workers, but the expats like me, people of the diaspora, children of immigrants from the Philippines who moved to different parts of the world and settled there. So, wanted to share some of the takeaways, the insights I got from the meetings that we had there. So, the stats we got from the Commission on Filipinos Overseas, there's about 12 million Filipinos working, living, just studying overseas. That's the number that they gave us. So that's essentially the diaspora. I know that there's more than 4 million in the United States alone. So that's one of the largest populations, including Canada and as far as OFWs, the Middle East, of course, as you know. So that was a big issue that we talked about, is why are there so many people, so many Filipinos still wanting to live and work overseas and leave their families behind, because in many of these jobs they can't bring their families, obviously, like domestic workers and in construction or in manufacturing in other countries. So, and the gauge that we got, the consensus from all the speakers, is that there still isn't enough uh, job opportunity. There's just not enough for these workers. They just are getting better pay overseas, so that's why they're moving, because it just is better. Now, some of the officials countered that by saying that there are jobs now because of the Build, Build, Build infrastructure program. And the problem is that they need some time to attract the workers back because a lot of them had gone overseas. And so trying to bring them back, trying to recruit from within the country also so that they don't go overseas, that's a big priority. So we'll see if that actually happens, because we are 3 years into President Duterte's presidency. So, in terms of the build, 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 it still will take a while to see some of the effects, I guess, in terms of jobs. But on the flip side, I did want to mention that even though there are jobs available, I guess maybe the match and skill set for some of these available jobs may not be there, or maybe the bridge to get to these jobs may be a little bit tenuous. So we'll see what happens with that. That was a big question we had. And in addition, we had a very good overview from some of our friends in the media, including the Philippine Press Institute. We also talked to one of our favorite analysts that's often quoted, Richard Hadarian, who is often known for his analysis of President Duterte and his administration. So that was entertaining as usual. And of course, we did talk to some of the actual OFWs and people who move overseas for different reasons and some of the struggles they face. And those were the most poignant stories that we heard from. So we had one of these maids from Dubai talk about her story about how she was actually raped by the child that she was babysitting or taking care of. He was 16. And that was disturbing. And what's even more disturbing is that she, got out of the situation. She escaped. She was able to, take that youth to court, and now he's in jail. But even after that, she still went overseas again to Saudi Arabia this time, and she said her family there was beautiful, and she had no problems in terms of her lifestyle there. But can you just imagine, after experiencing something that bad and still having to leave? And we asked her, why would you do that? And she said that she couldn't find any jobs, or if she did, they just didn't pay as not enough. And that's the sentiment we heard often. One of the interesting guests that we had, which we didn't expect, was Mary Jane Veloso's mom came and spoke to us about the status of her daughter. As you know, she is in jail in Indonesia for allegedly smuggling drugs or heroin as part of that very high profile case in Bali. So she had a stay of execution, but she's still there in the jail, and or at least in prison. And according to her mom, she's doing okay, but she's obviously trying to maintain international awareness about the case so that she's not executed, because at this point it seems like she's just waiting for some decision by the Philippine courts on that. So we'll see what happens there. But that was an interesting side note, because in addition to the OFWs going overseas, we talked about human trafficking, some of the desperation that people have because there's not enough opportunity in the Philippines. So the lengths they go to try to find jobs and find work. Mary Jane's mother had said that she was a victim of trafficking because she was promised work, but ended up in this scandal and this situation. And when we talked to some other people, they also mentioned about how they are victims of scams. And we did ask. I asked the agencies in charge of monitoring the OFWs and kind of taking care of their concerns. We unfortunately didn't talk to OWA, but we did talk to the POEA, which is the Philippine Overseas Employment Administration. And we also talked to NEDA, the National Economic Development Authority. So the officials there said that there are education programs out there to tell people to how to avoid some of these scammers and these illegal recruitment agencies, but you can't really force people to listen or at least access the services. So their advice was essentially, before you sign up with a recruiter or go with anyone promising you a job, you should check with them to make sure that the agency or the recruiter is legit. So that seems like common sense, but again, in a situation where something sounds so good for a person looking for a job, I could I could see why they can be tempted to just go ahead and be scammed. But that's unfortunate, because that's not really that's not necessary. There are jobs available, and it's just sad that people have to go to these lengths. But that's what's wrong with the Philippines, right? The poverty level. We did talk to the Poverty Commission as well. She came to speak with us. I'm trying to look for her. It's the National Anti-Poverty Commission. She also mentioned how they were facing a lot of budget issues and resource issues, and frankly, just not enough support from the administration. So that's why they're not doing as much as they could. So she talked to us as well. And we also did hear from Deputy Governor Diwa Ginigundo from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, that's the central bank. And he gave us kind of an overview of how important the remittance economy was. And so I know there's this theory going around that, or just a belief that because remittances make up such a big part of our GDP, about essentially 10%, more than $35 billion last year was sent back from all over the world. And that makes us fourth after China, or after India, China, and Mexico. And so the argument there was that because of this kind of reliance on the remittance economy, it's taken away focus of resources to be invested in building up our agriculture industry or a lot of these other industries that could create jobs in the Philippines. So we talked about that as well. And the deputy governor actually mentioned that that's not as bad as people think, because essentially all the money that that comes back is put back into the economy in terms of, education for the kids, renovations for the home, things like that, purchasing. It is consumer driven though. So that's essentially the challenge is, while the money is sent back and used for, these families that really need them, the larger issue of the social impact, the psychological impact of broken families. We heard from this one lady, very common story, where she was working overseas for many years and then came back and her husband had left her children, the children with the grandmother or something, and never to be seen again. Or in many cases, maybe they are seen again, but they're with someone else. So that's just the reality. But again, the social psychological impact, the children that are left behind, it's like, when I go away on business trips just for a few days, that's heartbreaking. I can't even imagine going for a year without seeing my own children. So luckily now there's devices that let you speak to your kids or to your family and see them. But back in the day when we didn't have FaceTime or some of these messaging apps, it was very difficult to communicate with your family. So just to remind, this is a really long vlog, by the way. Usually I keep it to about 4 minutes, but the Philippines was my topic and why I joined the program. So I just wanted to make sure that all the points that we went over, I can talk about. The Department of Defense, we also went to go see them. They gave us kind of an overview of the security situation in the Philippines. And that was just a general add-on to what's been happening. It's not really additional to immigration, but it does make the point that there are continuing elements of extremism that we need to be aware of. And the family unit is important to, I guess, making sure that you're safe and aware and being able to prevent any kind of extremist elements entering into your sphere of the world. So that's essentially what I got out of that section. And I think I covered everything. Overall, I think after all those sessions in the Philippines, it's just such a complex issue of, how do you keep Filipinos in the Philippines? You need higher wages, you need better conditions, you need better infrastructure, which obviously the government is working on right now. I mean, I myself can't understand how we can stay in traffic for that long. I mean, the production value, the loss of production is just ridiculous. And it's draining on people. And I can see why it breeds this kind of complacency to work, or just kind of this attitude of, I'm not going to go beyond what I need to do because I have family I have to take care of. So I understand that now. So yeah, it's a complex issue. I wish Filipinos can stay home and stay in the Philippines and be able to stay with their families. But the reality is, if they need to find opportunities elsewhere, and the rest of the world, frankly, needs labor. So Canada, Japan, Korea, they're talking about, their low birth rates and their inability to find workers for jobs that their own domestic populations don't want to do. And of course, there's the Filipino. So there is a demand for our workforce. So, how do you balance that? And my presentation was about changing OFW, which is overseas Filipino worker, to online Filipino worker, OFW. And I got that from one of my guests from the show before, who talked about the fact that we can transition from having to go overseas and staying in the Philippines and doing work online because of technology. We do have to work on the broadband access, but in terms of, outsourcing our talent, like teaching English to students in China or students in Vietnam via Skype. I mean, that's easy, or at least some sort of video conferencing system. And you can make good money doing that, and you don't have to leave. You can do that from the comfort of your home. So jobs like that, not just BPO, which is obviously call center work and telemarketing, but all the back end stuff like accounting, or maybe writing, I do that now. I'm freelance writing. So that's essentially the same thing. I'm based in the Philippines, but I'm writing for publications overseas. And you can do that and not have to commute and not have to deal with, just the hassle of maneuvering Manila. So anyway, so I totally rambled, I think, but I just wanted to share some of these takeaways from our Philippine leg of the fellowship because that was really my focus and what I really wanted to contribute to the country and learn more. In other news, May 13th is the election, as we know, and I'm here in Sydney, so I'm going to be talking to some overseas Filipino voters to find out what they think about the election. As we know, there's a lot of interesting candidates, so we'll see what OFWs or just expats living here think about what's happening in the Philippines. All right, so that's it. Till next time, I'll talk to you later. I have to give my Australia takeaway episode some time as well, so I'll try to do that in the next few days. All right, see ya. Bye.